No. Right, well, good evening, everybody. We've had 2 technical issues and a medical emergency, so it seems a good time to start a conversation finally. I'm joined by 2 handsome, radical, dangerous FPL managers, including a man that's just suffered a minor medical emergency. Good evening, Danny.
Evening, boys. Yeah, good to see Pep back joining us. Our first guest back for a second appearance.
Yep, he's back. We obviously didn't put you off too much, Stu. How have you been?
Yeah, not too bad. I've had a few health issues myself, but yeah, back for more punishment on the pod.
Well, and if it's surely the best reason to like, subscribe, share the links with your grandmother, your uncle, the guy at the corner shop. It's got to be Pep joining us for the evening. I may have misled you by sharing a picture of Pep Guardiola himself. It's not him, but we've got the next best thing, which is a man who uses his avatar. That seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do. Anyway, we're all fine, by the way. So if you're sending in sort of hopes and prayers due to our difficult medical states, we're actually okay. It's fine. I think we'll survive the evening anyway, provided we get the results we need in the fixture in an hour's time. Actually, we can look at the teams in a bit. Do remind me in case there's anything to look at there. Just a quick whip round as to what we're doing this evening. I think, to be honest with you, it's all about the AssMan. I've entitled this one Oliver's Army, which was a second Elvis Costello reference in the last month, which, to be fair, is quite a niche crowd, I'm guessing, but nevertheless, reference to Oliver Glasner. We'll be looking obviously at how you want to go with that decision, whether you roll for the table boners or go safe. And we'll be looking at some flavours of the week in terms of transfers that you might look at, touching on the fixtures, a little bit of loose thinking with regards to chip strategy, probably thrown in there as well, and of course our teams. We were going to share our ranks tonight, as you know. I don't do all of that stuff, but I haven't done that. So if you're looking forward to that, we could talk about it later on. There you go. The graphics won't come straight away. Actually, whilst I'm here, I'll do the first flash up of the evening, Danny, and just say good evening to our good friend Lego Mane. It's not over anyone's face as well. It's even better. Or Dan, as I know him. We know each other go a few years back, so I know all you people sharing his graphics, etc. We actually know Dan. Good guy. Anyway, let's start with the first topic this evening. I suppose we can start with the face on the screen in a minute, but let's just have a bit of a recap of where we are. Stu, are you on the AssMan chip?
Yeah, I've been on the AssMan chip 2 weeks. I've been on slot, obviously, for the 2 doubles. Had the cash handy when that double game week fell, and therefore I just thought, it seemed like an obvious choice. Not many people could get to him, so thought I'd stay on the team that's winning the league.
It seems like a fairly sensible strategy, doesn't it? Whereas Danny and I were lured by the sexy Alisson goalkeeper pick, which, again, just adds to our dangerous reputations here as well. And Danny, you started on Moyes, probably wish you'd left it on Moyes.
Yeah, I do actually. Then I'd have I'll have another transfer for one, wouldn't I? And more points. Yeah. I was just trying to catch up with all the things you were saying at the start. Sorry, because I was miles away at the start. Missed the first thing you said, and then you were talking about ranks, which I'm glad you said. So just so the viewers know, I was sort of suggested to Rich, maybe we should put our ranks on the screen, like pros do, and do people care about that? And because obviously Rich doesn't know his ranking, he doesn't
care either.
Yeah, he doesn't want to know, doesn't care, which is great. And I'm not too bothered, but I don't mind if it's on the screen. But then I said, well, we have to persuade Rich, because I said it can't just be me, because then it's going to look like you're interviewing me, which is definitely not the case. So anyway, what were we saying? Yeah, give us your feedback on that as well. So let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments. That's the first time I've said that, I think. But give us your feedback and persuade Rich that he needs to share his rank on the screen. So
no one wants to know that. You could probably find some surreptitious way of finding it. I am concerned that at some point someone's going to just oh, I didn't know you were there, Rich. I looked up your team earlier on. Don't do that because that's not very nice. But hello to all. Darren Malloy in the chat, welcome. I'm sorry, go on, Danny.
No, good shout. Yeah, say hello to the chat. Yeah, it's going to be even harder for you, isn't it, when you're podding now to avoid your rank? But we'll see.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, we talked about reasons for getting on the AssMan, didn't we, last week, and the sort of last minute panic and all that sort of stuff. And last time we podded was just before, when we still had hope. It was just before the Everton game, which was a roller coaster of an evening. I was like, every time it's like it finds a way to kind of crush your soul, FPL, doesn't it? You think it can't be that bad. I've got Njai. I just need him to if he gets a couple of points, it'll catch up to Wood. And I've got Everton. I've got Alisson. I could get a clean sheet either side. And like 15 minutes in, and Njai's out for the season, and both teams have conceded. And then Liverpool are winning, and it's just horrible. So when our man Tarkowski got that last minute winner, it was great. But yeah, it was never going to be slot for me. I'll be honest. I mean, that it might not work out, but I just think the chips designed for a table bonus. These people who pick slot, I don't know who these people are, but they're the sort of people who wear a helmet when they go for a walk, and God knows what. But no, it's been okay so far. And also, I've just seen the Villa team, so I thought I'd hold that in for the pod because I don't think you guys have seen it. Shall I tell you a bit about the Villa team tonight?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, no, it's new to it. I haven't looked yet.
So it looks like Emre's going all out, and he's started Rashford and Asensio, I think, and Watkins. Yeah, Asensio, Watkins, Rodgers, Rashford.
Nice.
Oh wow! Okay,
that's quite exciting, isn't it? Because I mean, I sort of said all along, and I know it's obvious, but obviously as a United fan, having watched Rashford for a long time, and you just kind of know what he's going to do. You know his attitude, and I'm not happy with him. What he's done at United, and I'm seeing people, well done for Emre for getting him in shape, and I'm like, it's not down to Emre. It's just that Rashford's been a dick, to be honest, for like 2 years, and he wanted out, and he's sulking and all that sort of stuff, and he's in control. And I knew he was going to sort himself out, at least initially. I don't know how long this will last. But obviously, he looked really good when he came on the weekend, didn't he? And I've said all along that Rashford's one of those people. He can score against absolutely anyone. So that's really important when you're talking about a defence with Van Dijk and Alisson. If Rashford's absolutely on it, we've got some hope again tonight. We've got some hope.
Actually, one man who's got some hope here. Stu, you picked him up in draft, didn't you?
Yeah, hearing that, I got Asensio in one draft team, and I got Rashford in the other. So I'm quite happy with that move. But Rashford will probably be good until he gets another contract with another team. He's probably one of these players that is when he's sort of like haggling for a move, is probably going to put more effort in or whatever. And then when he finally gets that move somewhere, that might die out.
Yeah, that reminds me of one of my favourite strikers. That Andy knows him. I mention him every week for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Andy Carroll. You remember that when he was on loan from Liverpool, he was getting a goal every other game, looking like an absolute menace. Then he signs properly, and it's like, yeah, he's all right.
I was thinking about Adebayor. He always looked fantastic when he was haggling for a move.
Indeed. Another bit of team news. Our good friend FPL SWAT latterly of the son of a gun team in SKLW back in the day. Diaz benched as well, so that's an important. It's an interesting one actually, because presumably Gakpo is out. I haven't actually checked that as well. Danny, did that flash up when you were checking?
I didn't check that either. Actually, I know Jota's. I heard Jota's starting.
So Nunes left, presumably.
I think Nunes is on the bench. I heard. Let me just check. Someone in the chat will probably. It is okay. We've got Jota.
Come on, chat.
Oh no, it's Jones. It's Jones left wing. So
Jones.
Yeah. So I forgot to mention that. So possibly even more hope for us. It's just strange. They've got. Yeah, it's Jones left wing and Jota up front.
Yeah, a little bit of an interesting one. Drawing Dead in the chat says full midfield, quite right. And welcome to you, Drawing Dead as well. Yeah, interesting. And we've already had some feedback there to get our ranks up. So we're going to have to do that at some point. I mean, not me. I can do whatever I like. I control the buttons. But these two have to share their rank. Broadly speaking, I mean, how much do you? I'd be interested to see how much you care about that, Stu, because you are the most dangerous one of all of us. Like, we will, by the way, get on with AssMan in a minute, I promise.
Yeah, I'm not sure my rank fits on the screen. That's one of the issues you might have. I'm not sure. I don't know how many digits you're allowed, but
well, for you, I used to go by this old rule that as long as your rank at the end of the season was lower than your FPL ID, and for you, that should be pretty easy.
That's simple. Yeah, no problem with that.
Stu is famous in our SKLW team for having a 7-digit FPL ID. Like, he just doesn't care. Logs in at the beginning of August.
Yeah.
So there we go. Anyway, we should get on with it, because I can feel the unease of people wanting to sort things out before the big game and to get on with that. And we've only got sort of 15 minutes before then. So I suppose we should just look at the contenders, really. I've got the pictures on the screen for those of you who are perhaps more sort of listening and doing the hoovering or something whilst you're doing that. But I've got McKenna for those who are interested. I know Danny carried some long-term interest in that fixture in case it was a table bonus up against Spurs at home. We've got Glasner bottom right, who obviously Fulham away, who are in form, but so are Palace. I think they are the bookies' favourites in terms of table bonus. So those looking at that. I haven't got Ruud van Nistelrooy up, actually. He's still, I think, quite popular with some of the algorithms, FPL Review, as being a little bit of a wild card up against Brentford at home. And then we got the existing manager for many, which is Arne Slot. And then we've got I suppose broadly regarded as the relative safe play, which is Arteta in the top right there as well. But just going to get the odds up for a second. Apologies that this isn't that big, but I'll just walk you down from the top. So at the moment, the projected FPL assistant manager points, we got Arteta at the top. If I can read that properly, I think it says 8.4. We got Glasner down there at 8, I think is that. And Ruud van Nistelrooy at the same. Kieran McKenna just a little below, and then Fabian Hertzler, and then Iraola. And then, of course, it's worth noting the existing fixtures. We got Arne Slot, who people could keep 5.5 points, and then Unai Emery 4.9. And if you were incredibly far-sighted, you might still have David Moyes at 5 there as well. I mean, let's just start with who we're interested in talking about first of all. Stu, who's in your list of considerations at this point? Are you going to switch first of all? Because there's lots of people who messaged in about Slot and they are considering keeping.
Yeah, I hadn't decided actually. My initial thought was just to keep Slot and to use the one free transfer that I've got on a player, or potentially take a hit to try and do something towards 29. But thinking about maybe having a last hurrah with the last week of the manager chip. How much extra I could gain from doing that one transfer, not sure. Glasner or McKenna I was looking at. Had Spurs not won against Manchester United, I would have been more keen on McKenna. I still think Spurs are the kind of team that could quite easily slip up against a team at the bottom of the table. Still not playing too well, but they do have some players back and looked a little bit better in the Man United game. Glasner is definitely an option, but it's not an easy fixture. Fulham away. Fulham are a good team, playing quite well, but it might be worth the risk if they think that is going to be worth significantly more than Slot. But looking at that, 8 points compared to 5.5, I'm not sure that's worth a transfer necessarily.
So just to be clear for you then, because you've got a few problems. I think you've got an injury in midfield, haven't you? So a lot of people this week are weighing up whether it's potentially worth a hit to bring in an assistant manager. In your situation, would it be a hit then for you? Can you cover it without?
I mean, I don't have to take the hit.
Yeah,
I could play Rodgers, but I'm not particularly keen on. I've got Ahmad at the moment, which we'll get onto that when we look at my team. But I might want to replace him with potentially Boomo or one of the Bournemouth players and try and maximise the points on the pitch.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll come to your team in a bit. I mean, Danny, where are you leaning at this point in the time? You've got a similar situation, haven't you, where you've got a few issues in the team, João Pedro not necessarily starting and so on. Are you still set on using your transfer on this though?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the priority transfer. This will be happening for me regardless, I think. And I've got a front line of Isak, Isak, Pedro, and Iliman and Jai. So it's pretty much as bad as you can get them. Look at he's smiling, Rich. He loves it. Look at the Schadenfreude in his face.
That's right. I won't say any I've got wood jokes here. We're not that kind of podcast.
God. Lucky I'm in a good mood. Yeah, and I mean, I've not really thought about it from the perspective of a slot owner or something like that. I think I'd pretty much, make a move in anyone's scenario. Pep just mentioned there in terms of the points. I mean, I know, Pep, you don't use anything like FPL Review or models or anything like that ever. But as an example, if that was a player, even, it's EV and expected points of kind of the difference. If it was a player and the player was 5.5 or 5, and then you were looking at swapping him to a player that was on 8, that's huge. That's a really, really big jump. And that's just kind of the, as you say, the EV rather than the potential of it. I mean, the way I'm thinking about this chip really in terms of the manager bonus is it's a no-brainer for me. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure in getting the right team. You can easily get it wrong, but even if you look at these odds, these odds of winning, so say it's like, you've got most of these teams are 30% chance of winning. Ipswich, Palace, whoever else, Leicester, roughly something like that.
Yeah, 28% Glasner, 27% Nistelrooy, and I think that's 26, isn't it? My eyesight is failing me, but for McKenna, so yeah, very similar.
Yeah, so I mean, if you had a player, I mean, I know people have probably talked this to death, but if you had a player and you were looking at FPL Salah's shared odds or something, and you've got maybe you've got a midfielder who's got a 28% chance of getting a goal or return, it's pretty decent. That's pretty decent in most cases. 30% chance, except with this chip, you've got not got a 30% chance of getting a goal or maybe a return and maybe getting 6 to 10 points. You've got a 30% chance of getting 20 points. So it's a huge, bet to make, and even if they draw, so what some of the teams. So if it was for these guys to lose rather than draw, it's probably less than 50%. I don't know, 40. What is it? 49, 48%.
So what do you think, Danny? Are we been playing this chip wrong? Should we have been going for massive table bonuses all 3 weeks? Is that how it's supposed to be played, do you think?
Well, it's obviously more complex than that. So I wouldn't just say it black and white, but because obviously, it's sort of dependent on the week, dependent on the team, on the context, and who you actually backing in terms of the expensive manager, what fixture they've got as well, how much of a banker it is, how ridiculously good they are at the time. But generally, I've said all along, I think if you play this chip 1,000 times over 1,000 seasons, that would be my guess that it's better to just look for that table bonus regularly.
And do you know when I would play it then in that case? I would play it in the last 3 weeks of the season because you get some odd results and you get teams at the bottom that are scrabbling to get out of relegation, and they do get some good results at that end of the season. Yeah,
and that's what we've said. We talked about it last week, and some people are in that position where they do still have it, and maybe they're looking at those last 3 weeks now as the best option, which is great because we talked about it last time. But last season was a good example. The last game of the season was Palace against Villa, when we were all confident Palace were going to win that game. They were on fire. Everyone was scoring. Everyone got the players in, and they won 5-0, and it was like a 30-point game or something. So you're right. There was a lot of information there in terms of when to use it, but obviously we've just had. I think you've got to balance that against times like now where you've got 5 games to use it, and looks like people who've still got the chip will probably switch their strategy around to use it in 31 or whatever it is. So they've got another 5 games out of Newcastle and so on, and maybe fewer transfers as well. So yeah, for me, I'm not going to overthink it. It's nice to have that potential. I don't want any regrets for the season. We'll probably never use the chip again. That doesn't really come into my thinking because at the end of the day, I do want to maximise my points. But I think the EV itself, in terms of these bookies odds, tell you that that's the way to play it for me, for the most part. Because, you know, you've got basically an EV of these guys, McKenna and Glasner, that matches the EV of Arteta for half the price.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you know, that does take into account that ceiling, obviously. But yeah. So it's just a question of who, and it's weird, isn't it? Because like now I'm kind of looking. You kind of put loads more into one fixture than you would normally in terms of trying to figure it out, you know, and start looking at things that you wouldn't necessarily give much attention to, you know. So I'm looking at things like what have the results been this season? What have the results been in the reverse fixture for these guys? What sort of results have they had? What sort of teams have they beaten and not beaten? And you know, obviously you might be going into too much, but I think it's fine, and that's kind of my process because it's very close between these guys. I'm looking at sort of, you know, smaller sample sizes, what these teams are looking at for the last 6 weeks or so. And yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Glasner at the moment. I mean, Fulham have just been so good, aren't they? I mean, with all of these fixtures, Brentford can be a bit up and down sometimes. You know, Spurs definitely are massively up and down. Fulham are pretty solid across the board. Last 6 game weeks, they're like top for expected goals conceded. You know, and they've pretty mixed fixtures. They've had not just easy fixtures. They're like 3rd for expected goals. So, yeah. Whereas, I mean, what should we do? Should we talk about all the managers? What are you thinking, Rich, in terms of any of these guys?
Yeah, no, I think if we divide things into 2 a little bit here, because coming back to what Stu said, quite rightly, you raised the point about how we should be playing this chip and that sort of thing. I think for now we should just concentrate on what's in front of us, which is there are people who are watching, not listening to me obviously, but are thinking about Danny and yourself and thinking about what their decision this week, which is the one in front of them. No one is going to be starting to play the assistant manager chip this week, are they, realistically? So you're either on it and you have to make a choice, or you play it realistically now in 2 pockets, which is 31 to 33 or 32 to 34, or the last 3 fixtures, which is the one that were quite interesting. So I think we just have to zone in on the now. I think what's interesting as well is also to look through the process of what people have already done. Now, Stu, I think one of the reasons why, say a Moyes and an Emery were so popular is that you could have your cake and eat it, right? You had an easy fixture attached to a difficult fixture with table bonus. So that's why it was so popular and so many people suddenly had to make that decision a few Fridays back. It's because, yes, it was Liverpool, and yes, I'm sure tonight they'll win, and so on and so forth. But you've got that mixed, that sort of hybrid approach. People love a hybrid approach of anything, don't they? Where they're able to get a little bit of both. You know, so to get that potential 4-0 fixture, to get that potential upset fixture, that's the way that it panned out. I think this week is quite different, you know, in the way that it feels. I mean, not necessarily in terms of how you apply your logic, but you know, you are now looking at a 1-game shootout, aren't you? So you don't get the bonus of the easy fixture necessarily if you're backing an Ipswich or a Crystal Palace. You don't get the nice squishy one first, with the risky part thrown in. So I think that does make it feel a little bit different. I mean, if I just bring up our good friend FPL Swat there, mentioning that I guess it being a 1-game punt, it is either Risk or Arteta. I think there's a few people I know, very rarely, but a few people on Iraola already who decided to go for a little run on him. So that's another situation where you might decide to leave it. But yeah, that probably is the conversation for most people. That's quite right. But yeah, absolutely. Let's go through the candidates then. I mean, let's go through the ones on the screen. I mean, how do you, Danny? Do you want to speak about McKenna? Because I know that he's someone that you've had a little bit more interest in long term. So it's popular to talk about it this week, especially now that it's in focus. But this was one that you had targeted a few weeks back.
Yeah, I was probably leaning more towards Leicester actually a few weeks ago.
Okay.
They all seem to have, you know, obviously pros and cons. What I like about McKenna, again, kind of obvious, is one of the games they've won this season was against Spurs. I'm just trying to find where the team is here. You know, and who knows the reasons for that? I don't know. You know, in terms of the setup, McKenna's a funny one because I don't know. I mean, one thing with Ipswich, they've just got a new keeper, and obviously he was like man of the match the other day. But the previous keeper, Muric, you know, again we speak to Ivan a lot, and you know he sort of gives us a commentary on the game. Muric, the previous keeper, had cost them loads of points, and he's cost them loads of goals and blunders. And the number of times this season where they were 1-0 up, or winning a game, or drawing a game, and they lost it in the last few minutes. And Ivan would text me every time going, Muric again, I can't believe it. So that's kind of quite nice, first of all, as a blanket. Obviously, they just got a result away at Villa, which is amazing, with 10 men all game. And as I say, yeah, they've won that game previously. It's a massive game for them. They're at home. They've got the home one, you know, they're not. So Palace haven't got the home advantage. One of the drawbacks for it, potentially on paper at least, is that Spurs have actually got a full week off before that game. Mm-hmm. And obviously Spurs are a team that have been run into the ground by the manager, to be honest. Mm-hmm. That doesn't necessarily mean they're all of a sudden going to be sharp. Sometimes when your body's been absolutely annihilated for an entire season, and then suddenly you get a bit of a break, your body shuts down and just like tries to take a long break. So who knows what that means? But obviously on paper, it's not ideal that they're going into that fully fresh. So at the moment, I'm just sort of thinking heuristically again, just like what boxes do I tick? Okay, Ipswich, they've won that game already previously in the reverse fixture. It's a massive game. They're at home. They're playing well. They've got a new goalkeeper. Also, you know, again, looking into terms of like stats again on I was just having a flick through stats on the last 6. It's much more appealing looking at that fixture for me than the others. So basically, again, in the last 6, we kind of mix fixtures. The thing is with that fixture is both obviously Ipswich are towards the bottom in terms of XG scored and XG conceded, but so are Spurs. So actually, both teams, the numbers aren't great. Obviously, Spurs have had a lot of injuries. I know they've got this new centre back or whatever. I don't know much about him, and I know they've got Tell and stuff. I'm not going to go. You know, I'm not going to read too much into that because I haven't really seen much evidence of them, you know, making a huge difference yet. Whereas, as I said, when you compare that in terms of the numbers to, for example, Brentford and Leicester, Brentford have really good numbers recently. I think they're like second or something for expected goals, or they're top for expected goals or something. They're pretty high up for expected goals and expected goals conceded, whereas Leicester are pretty much bottom for both. So in terms of the numbers, the recent numbers, it's not looking great for backing Leicester there. Again, though, Leicester, what I do like is they're at home. Again, another little box ticked. It's Friday night under the lights, which is always nice. You know, it's going to be a big atmosphere. Again, though, the only thing with Brentford is we always, I always talk about Brentford, that they're kind of, you know, saying last week that they're kind of playing shapes. They're a numbers team. They generate chances. They just know how the formulations, you know, as long as they've got these players fit. And one of the things that seems to result in is that they generally just beat up the teams that aren't as good as them. And then, you know, the games that they lose, they might lose. So they seem potentially quite predictable. You know, if you just look at their, you know, who have they lost to? They lost to Liverpool away, City away, Spurs away, United away, Fulham away, Villa away, Chelsea away, Forest at home, Arsenal at home, Liverpool at home, Spurs at home. You know, they've lost to the big teams, and then they beat Palace, Southampton, Wolves, Ipswich, Bournemouth, Leicester, Newcastle, Southampton, Palace, West Ham. You know, in some of those games, they just went all out. It was 5-3 Wolves, 4-3 Ipswich, 3-2. They beat Bournemouth 3-2. They battered Leicester in the reverse fixture 4-1.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of sort of negative boxes against what really is just that it's a big game for Leicester. Leicester have looked pretty good recently. They're at home. It's Friday night.
I mean, if I could just briefly kind of interject there, which is that just on Brentford at the moment as well, is worth saying this because the scoreline in that West Ham Brentford game really was not reflective of the performance. Brentford should have gone in 3-0 up. Wissa definitely was. If you own Wissa in here, you can curse your luck because, I mean, he really should have had a couple of goals. They obviously had disallowed goals and so on. West Ham didn't have any clear-cut chances at all until the second half, and even they were sketchy. So it really could have easily been a 3-4-0 game and no one would have complained.
Yeah, and then just to touch on kind of Fulham Palace again, numbers wise, it doesn't look great. Fulham are so solid, but also just thinking about Palace. I mean, don't get me wrong, Palace could definitely win this game because Glasner's a good manager. It's definitely the game where you would say, kind of season long and on paper, the two most balanced sides, I suppose, or at least close. I think Fulham are a better side, but I mean, Palace haven't looked great recently. Just lost to Everton. I mean, basically, Mateta's playing really well, and he's a big barnstorming bulldozer of a player who's really hard to deal with. But other than that, there's nothing really jumping out. It's not like last season where they've got Eze and Elise up front with him. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe Glasner's pretty close at the moment. I'm thinking Glasner and McKenna. And I mean, but again, in terms of this week, people are talking about Arteta being safe. You'll probably say he is. I know, West Ham fan. Beware of
you can predict it, can you?
Yeah, exactly. So it's almost like don't ask Rich. It's like don't ask Zoff about a Chelsea fixture. But again, it's still Graham Potter, and it's still an Arsenal team that don't really have any attackers. Although Nwanueri, or however you pronounce his name, just gone blank how you pronounce his name. But you've got some good players, but they don't have much of an attack left. Arsenal, So what they're probably going to be defensive. They're going to be, they're going to be prioritising defence. Are you going to get many goals? Will they get that clean sheet? Who knows with that result? And then obviously, Slot suddenly, I would have been much more confident against City until that result against Newcastle last week, and them having Gonzalez back in midfield. And what does that mean? And they're playing Real Madrid tonight, so I suppose we'll see some of that tonight. But so the big guys don't really appeal all that much to me. So this is where I'm at. I know that's a lot there, and I've just kind of spewed a lot out, but I'm thinking about those managers and I'm trying to simplify it. I've come down to McKenna, probably slight favourite over
Rouge. Yeah. Okay, cool. Go on.
Go on. What about you?
Well, I was actually just going to very quickly ask Stu, because I mean, you mentioned, because obviously Stu's our resident Spurs fan here. How do you see things? Are you a little bit more hopeful in terms of this week off, players back, resistance against Ipswich? You feel a bit more confident, or would you back a defeat for Spurs?
I mean, I'm not massively confident. I mean, Spurs haven't played well for quite a long time, but Vicario back in goal was a massive boost, and Maddison back in the team. He seemed to run the show quite well against Manchester United. Definitely pulled the strings. But you know what Spurs are like, right? They're Spursy, so they could do anything in any game. On the Ipswich Town, to counter what Danny was saying, I think they've only won. Oh, they have beaten Spurs at Spurs Stadium, but they have only won 3 games this season so far, home and away. And so I think they have 5 or 6 draws, but so you're banking on a team that hasn't won many fixtures all season, up against the Spurs team that's got some players back and a bit of a morale boost, and maybe looking to kick on after the Manchester United match. Really not sure about that how that game's going to unfold, to be honest. The Fulham game against Crystal Palace, that again could go either way. I've actually got it down as a draw. I think it'll be a draw, which I think gets you some points with the AssMan anyway. I think Arteta is a really safe bet this week, but I'm not even sure that's worth moving from slot, because I actually think that Liverpool will still beat City. I know City have got some new players and looked a bit better in the last couple of games, but they're still not firing on all cylinders. And I think I have recently heard that Haaland's not in the team tonight because of injury. So if he's not back for the weekend and they're playing without him, I know he hasn't been scoring, but I still have Liverpool down to win that match. So you've really got to say, right, how can I get more points from one of these other managers than a Liverpool win for Slot? And I'm not 100% sure that you can, but I think if I was going to gamble, I would probably go with McKenna. Just.
I'm just looking at the projections there as well. So what have we got? We've got Slot on 41% win, which is, as you say, okay. So what have we got? The difference, 41% versus, is it 77? God, there's bloody small writing on the screen for our Twitter. So it is. I think there are a few names to throw out there as well, because we've been just sent in questions on this, so I'll come to it in just a second. But I will talk a little bit briefly about the West Ham Arteta thing, because Danny would expect it of me to sort of pour woe into the chat at the moment. But this is just an interesting one. So we need to cover two things. One is what you do with Emery, because there will be a few that, if they do get a result tonight, obviously we'll be quite interested. In that there is still a permutation which does affect one or two of the table bonuses as well if Emery does win, but nonetheless we'll come to that in a minute. Another one is that with the field being not too clear on who to go for, there's actually a suggestion from one of our regulars, FPL Easy, for Thomas Frank, and he thinks that it could easily be the kind of fixture where he wouldn't be surprised if they ran out 3 or 4 goal winners. Any interest in that one?
Not from me, because it's just Friday night away from home. Late Riser's got. I was talking to him, and he's got a similar feeling. I think he's thinking about maybe captaining a Brentford player.
Yeah.
And it's again with Brentford, it's very possible, but I think it's too possible that they actually lose to want to go there for that. Although, yeah, it's not crazy. I just no, I think with me, again, just heuristically, pretty simple. Either go for an absolute banker, what you believe to be an absolute banker, or go for a table bonus is what I would say. Just to say before I forget as well, Pep, you obviously you're right to point out how few games Ipswich have won. But Ipswich and Spurs have both lost 14 games this season.
Yeah.
Well worth pointing that out.
Pretty remarkable, really, to have lost 14 games.
And kudos on using the word heuristic twice during the pod so far. But that's what you get when you tune in here. You get a couple of doctorates, no questions asked. And of course, for that, it's a good time to hit the like and subscribe. Just smash it as hard as you can without breaking anything if you can. Quick word on Arteta, and I have to say it because, of course, you would expect it of me. I won't lie. I mean, I can't speak for the Arsenal perspective, obviously, because it's fairly clear that they've got their best attacking players injured. There's no doubt about that. When Arsenal last came, I think at the end of Moyes' reign, it was very much a kind of full strength side, bar Jorginho. If he's a little bit wet, but they won out 6-0 at West Ham. It was an absolutely hideous spanking of a game. Earlier this season under Lopetegui, they scored 5 at West Ham. But again, these are different circumstances with a much more free-flowing Arsenal team. But yeah, it's not looking good from a West Ham point of view. It was a little better in the second half. I think Evan Ferguson came on and looked like a striker, basically. So that added something. But I mean, yes, if we were doing our predictions for the fixtures, it's probably the easiest 2 or 3-0 win. You would tend to
beware of fans. Beware of fans, viewers.
Yeah, no, absolutely, quite right. And Moods in the chat quite rightly pointing out that the game before there was a fixture not so long ago where Moyes turned in a win. I think that's what you're referring to, Moods.
And Arsenal aren't free flowing at the moment. They're definitely struggling to grind out results with players out of position.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that they've just played Leicester and the worst defence in the league and created barely anything for the first 70 minutes, which is quite remarkable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, no, that's fine. I think this is why it's come down to this, isn't it? I can see it's absolutely viable to go down one of these two routes. I think I'm a little bit more warm to the idea of being boring. It won't surprise Daddy at all, because of having that knowledge of what we're like right now. But yeah, of course, I mean, no decisions made at this point in time. I think we have covered the right people, I think, in this kind of conversation.
There's probably one more, just in case you're going to move on in terms of covering people. But a lot of people are wondering whether to stay on Emery, aren't they?
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, you can save a transfer, so that can be pretty reasonable. And again, if you are just like many people and you've got that one transfer, it's reasonable to look at that from an EV perspective. In terms of you're saving 4 points if you potentially, especially with people thinking about 29 and saving those transfers and how many transfers they'll have and how many players they'll have. So it's very logical for a lot of people. It's probably very logical for me, even, for example. Certainly, if I was not going to free hit in 29, to just maybe keep.
I think you're right. This is a much easier conversation probably to have for Emery holders, owners rather, to have after they see the result tonight. But that's definitely. I think it's just pretty much as reasonable as it is for Slot to hold. I think it's not wildly dissimilar. A lot of people seem to be saying, "Oh, I can hold Slot, but I would change Emery." I don't really see that being a big divide, to tell you the truth. I think I would just as readily hold Emery at home to a pretty bang average looking Chelsea lately. Honestly, even West Ham gave them a pretty good game a few weeks ago, and we suck, as you know. I mean, by the way, this is nothing against Potter. He's doing a fairly decent job. It's just literally, he's got a situation where this weekend he's going to have to probably revert to playing Dinos Mavropanos, and he's the most error-prone defender we have. So yeah, that doesn't help him. So he is in a bit of a pickle from that point of view. But attackers coming back, so maybe it balances itself out a little bit.
The other thing to consider is obviously if you've got a Slot or an Emery, and you need budget for some other transfers you've got in mind, then coming off of them onto a cheaper manager to free up some funds is also a consideration, right? So in my position, going down from Slot to one of the cheaper managers gives me the budget to use elsewhere in the team.
Yeah, it's actually a very good point, Stu, because I didn't consider that at all. That you could save, couldn't you, $1 million there immediately?
Yeah.
And of course, it's worth putting in for your planning. I know that a lot of people are going to get a sort of a nice Christmas bonus situation next week when they get $1.5 million back in the bank, which is quite lovely. It certainly will enable me to do an enjoy move next week, hopefully. So that's what I'll be looking at. Okay, we can come back to this a little bit, but of course there are some players that are linked into these conversations as well. I don't know whether we'll do a full bit now on Man City, but I do think we have to take the player on the left seriously as a new conversation that we probably weren't going to be having. I mean, personally, this is Marmoush on the screen to the left. And of course, on the right there, you got Wanyeri. I think it's a silent N apparently, but I don't know whether that was a joke that I heard somewhere. Yeah, Wanyeri. I probably should know that. I used to work next door to the Arsenal stadium until recently, so I should probably know that sort of thing. But every time I saw Declan Rice's face on a giant poster board, I sort of grimaced. It's very difficult for me. Anyway, so Marmoush. First couple of weeks, I remember spotting when I'm watching him in the highlights. He's played sort of 70-ish each week, isn't he? And he just seemed like the kind of guy who was very happy to shoot from absolutely anywhere and never getting anywhere near the goal. But this week, that all changed, and so we should really talk not just about him, but also whether now you're being assuaged towards thinking about City a little bit more. How about you, Danny? Do you feel like they are now entering your plans? Because obviously, your decision on City, in a sense, is probably a similar decision about how you use your chips and blanks over the next few weeks, right? Because it's quite a similar conversation. It probably means you are or you're not sitting.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm just thinking now, I wouldn't say they're entering they are entering my plans, but they're not in my plans. I think you now need to be aware of City. I hope that they do, really kick back into gear in some shape, because it'll shake things up a bit, won't it? People will really need to consider them for 33 and then even post 34, and that's interesting to me. I didn't see them. I didn't watch it live on Saturday. I heard that Gonzalez was really good and it made a big difference. I was shocked by that result, but again, Newcastle without Joe Linton, sometimes they just don't show up at all. That's a big blow for them. But I mean, I'm definitely thinking about City now, and I'm thinking about potential moves, and I suppose it is big actually, isn't it? Because the more City improve, the more you feel like you want to captain one of the players maybe in 29. Never mind own one or two of them. And then you've got to think about that double in 33. And I sort of feel quite positive about Marmoush as well, because obviously for the last however long it's been, there isn't any City options other than Haaland, because he's the only one who's going to play every game, apart from the odd defender here and there and a bit of Foden last season. But generally, you don't really like to pick any of the picks, so you think you can just sort of sit out and not bother because they'll miss the odd game. But you'd think that it's probably different now, because obviously in the past, for the last 6 or 7 years, City have basically been Pep's sort of plaything to keep him entertained. He's had so many variations that work that he's able to experiment. So he's experimenting, giving them more, kind of branches and options and strings to the bow and stuff. And so that's been sort of part of the process for the last 5 years now. Whereas at the moment, nothing works. So he's coming from a kind of blank slate where he's just got to desperately find something that works. Is what it seems to me to be the case. So I think that if he clicks a few things into place and finds that Marmoush is playing really well and it's working, and is working with Haaland, you'd think that probably makes him more solid than in terms of his minutes than it would have done in the past. Because it's been a long time now with things not working with Doku and Grealish or whoever wants to play that, who's been playing up front. So, a hat-trick is the way to do it. So, and he just looks totally fearless. He's just come from, he was like the second highest scorer in Europe before he joined. He's already passed that, are you phased by the big stage test? He obviously isn't at all. And he's got a hat-trick already. So I'm definitely looking strongly at Marmoush in terms of what's nice about City is, again, we've got that time. It's not like I don't think anyone's rushing to get on, because we've got great options like Wood and Cunha and other players that are up front around that price point. But if you want to bring him in on a free hit, it looks lovely. If you want to bring him in for 29, it looks lovely. If you want to just bring him in 33 for a double, if you do feel good about his minutes, it looks lovely.
I mean, what's really handy for some as well is that, if you sold Wood as a skill issue a few weeks ago, you can get Marmoush and Cunha, whereas for me, I can only get one. So it's a really quite annoying. So good for you is all I can say on that score. Let's move on quickly to Stu. What do you think about City at the moment, Stu? Are you building a road to Haaland when he gets fit, or looking at a sort of Foden punt or something exciting like that? I mean, not the latter, because obviously that's ridiculous. But
trouble with Haaland is obviously the price, right? So you're committing to selling Salah or Palmer, presumably. You're going to be doing that maybe in 29 to be able to get the budget to get Haaland. But with Marmoush, you could bench those players and still have them beyond that and have a nice City player for 29. That's what I'm thinking. They finally got a proper replacement for Alvarez, it seems like, to play up front behind Haaland. Yeah, it seems like 2029 could be the entry point to start thinking about City. And like Danny said, you've got to consider them beyond that for the doubles, definitely.
I think, joking aside a little bit a minute ago, but, in terms of keeping your plans flexible, Marmoush offers an awful lot in that regard. So for people who are playing through 29, want to keep for 30, want to keep their options open about which week to wildcard, etc., he offers that, right? Because you do need to make quite a pointed decision as to whether you're going to get Haaland. I think that's the thing. You need to sell probably Palmer, or more likely for most Salah. So it's quite a difficult decision, and it will involve something. And of course, if you want to hold Isak, and you can still do that with Marmoush. So that it offers a lot of, for cowards like me, it offers quite a lot of flexibility. On the other hand, of course, you are going to get the caveat of, you know, not a penalty taker in likelihood, and of course, someone who, you know, you might not, captain and so on and so forth. So there is that issue as well. But of course, we don't know about Haaland's injury situation. That's interesting. Shout out, of course, to Rico Lewis, worst pick in the game. He's back starting this week as well. It gave me a little chuckle when I saw his name come up there as well. But actually, strangely enough, the easiest one to get into my squad, I was particularly interested in just watching how they handled things defensively. And actually, the centre-backs looked a little bit more assured. Admittedly, Newcastle couldn't really get that close to them for whatever reason during this game. And
have you seen Newcastle's record against Manchester United?
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, even West Ham are better at the Etihad than them. That's saying something.
I mean, I thought, you know, City not being quite as good as they have been down the years, but Newcastle went there and got hammered 5-0 yet again. But seems like they always get beaten by that score when they go there.
Bit of a shocker, yeah. But the reason why I mentioned that is, of course, is that for a lot of pre-wildcard teams, giving up potentially something like a Trent spot or another defender spot for a week or two, Guardiola will be a potential one on the cards for some as well. So that was quite interesting as well. Okay, well, City are one option. Of course, Nwaneri was brought in by a few, and of course, he's. I've heard a few people talk about trying to find room to. It's more of an analytics play potentially, but to captain an Arsenal player this week. But it's very, very difficult, isn't it, to kind of put your hat on that. You liked what you saw of Nwaneri, Danny, from how you discussed things earlier. Is it just a case of it doesn't really fit for you? How would you advise him for people interested in that?
Yeah, I just want to say as well quickly, sorry, I always do this, but just very, very quickly on Marmoush's last point before going on to that was, I think you just mentioned sort of maybe people wouldn't consider captain him, or you said something about captaincy.
Oh, yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that I will be considering that, you know, especially if he's showing consistent minutes, just because, and I wouldn't normally say that, but it obviously we'll see what the minutes are like when we get to 33, but also it's just worth noting that in 29, City are one of, you know, the 3 o'clock kickoffs at the moment, so unless that changes, they're the first team to play. So, you know, we tend to get leaks for City, don't we? So if you get a leak in 29 that Marmoush is playing, that seems pretty reasonable to me. But yeah, Nwaneri, I just saw match of the day in terms of his last game, but that was enough to be like, wow. He's 17 as well, isn't he? Is that right?
Yeah, he's quality player.
Yeah, I mean that was ridiculous. That was obviously watching that was like, oh, should have found a way to get this guy. You know, I knew he was good already, but it was just the nature of that game and the way that he just kind of stepped up and took it on his shoulders to just lead the way. I mean, he reminded me a lot of Saka in his sort of decision making and his cross. I mean, his cross for the goal was such a Saka cross. You know, he goes inside and outside in the same way as Saka. He just moves in the same way, keeps the ball close to him and just looks so dangerous. But if anything, again, just in that one game, but if anything, he looked almost more direct. And that was like, oh, wow. You know, it's amazing some of these young players, isn't it? How they're just not remotely phased by just taking on Premier League defenders one-on-one and trying to beat them and go past them. And just thought, what I saw in those highlights was just like, wow, he could be a ridiculous pick now for the next few weeks, and he probably is the best value pick in the game. I guess he's right up there anyway. He's right up there right now.
I went a bit further back actually, Daddy, and thought he looked a little bit Theo Walcott-like, to be honest, at that age, at 17.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting when Saka gets back, though, isn't it? Because they're both right-sided players.
Yeah, obviously, it all depends on Saka's timeline and how long you want to keep it. And obviously, I mean, you know, obviously we've got Bournemouth midfielders that are fantastic that we're less concerned about in terms of the minutes, and we've got other players. But I've not heard any news of Saka coming back anytime soon. I'd be very happy to go there. It's worth it. His ownership's going to be really low for a while, isn't it?
Yeah.
Suddenly that Chelsea fixture in 29 is looking a lot better than it was a few weeks ago as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's worth saying that, you know, this is kind of an ideal. I mean, as much as Arsenal have their injury problems, it's a for Saka returning, it's a relatively ideal scenario, right? Presumably if Nwaneri keeps showing good form, because they can ease Saka back in. But I do think, I agree with you. He's a little bit more direct. Actually, if anything, what interested me about him, because I'd seen that of him before when his flashes off the bench, cutting in and driving towards the kind of penalty spot more centrally. But he, what actually impressed me more was the cross for the goal, because that I hadn't seen that side of him a little bit more of a very selective
Saka-like cross
to supply. Yeah, exactly. That was the moment that got me. So actually, if anything, it was that moment where he was it. I can't remember which of Marino's goals, but it's the one where he got the header.
Yeah, the first one. Yeah.
But that was the part that impressed me. I think the other thing that's quite useful about him is if you look at if he does continue playing and Saka isn't back for a little. I don't know about this because I think Saka is due back in that early 30s run of in April. But if for whatever reason he's still in the team and you do have a Django issue, because I know that people are a little bit worried about that and the return dates for him for Evan Nilsson and so on as well. I mean, he's still got a nice run. Arsenal got a really nice run of fixtures. I think you can include Chelsea now. Actually, I mean, even aside from Nottingham Forest away, they're all pretty decent. So 29, you've got Chelsea away, Fulham at home, Everton away, Brentford at home, and they're not amazing, but they are pretty. You'd be quite happy to go in on that. So I think he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. And it's a little bit of me that's a tiny little bit of a regret there, because it would have been quite easy to save a hit last week and to get out when we did talk about it briefly, didn't we, Danny? And I didn't take it seriously enough, I think, to be fair. But
so do either of you have a spot for him at all?
No,
in midfield, because obviously I've got the Ahmad situation. And Rodgers.
You could, yeah.
So yeah, quite happily put him in without.
And that enables you to feel like you've got a little bit more of a stake in the Arsenal game, right? Yeah. And then you can use your table. But I'm doing my SKLW talk on you, like take the risk. It's not just not
a striker this week, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think it's worth considering for sure. Okay, good. Any remaining fixtures that you'd like to have a chance to talk through? So we're coming up to 7:30 shortly. So I know some people will be keeping an eye on the Villa fixture that's about to kick off. But yeah, interesting to look down the match odds for this week, and then of course have a little bit of a think about whether potential starters in your team. Danny, for example, I know that you would have choices like playing Hall or Mikalenko this week, and that might be affected by the odds that we got on the screen there. Anything you want to pick out, Danny?
Well, I'm not sure really. I'm just seeing straight away again what I was saying before in terms of look at the win percentages for those teams that are favourites in the table bonus. It's only a 48% chance that you don't get your draw bonus or your win bonus. So it doesn't look, it looks pretty decent, doesn't it, on paper? What are we looking at? It's weird looking at the fixtures like this. I find it easier to look, on the app, and it just makes. I don't know.
Do you know what? Actually, what we could do whilst we're having a bit of a collective think about what we might like to pick on, I'll just throw a few questions out at you, and we'll see if we can build around that. Let's talk. A few people have got obviously are still deciding about Bournemouth. So I'd be interested to see whether, because I know some people have said Wolves looked a lot brighter, kept Liverpool to no shots. I think, was it right? Is that right? No shots on target in the second half of that game. Cunha, of course, someone that people might get this week or next week. I'm thinking about it for next week. It's an option. So what do we think of that Bournemouth Wolves game? Because that's one we haven't talked about yet. Is it a comfortable win or not? Because it could be easy. It could be easy to think that.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so on paper. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because again, in the reverse fixture, Bournemouth kind of battered them. I think it finished 4-2, but I think Bournemouth were like 4-0 up. I think they were 4-0 up away from home, and then or something like that, or 4-1 at least.
Yeah, it was a Cliver penalty hat trick, wasn't it, or something?
Oh, was it? Right, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was that one.
right. And then Wolves got a couple of kind of consolation goals, so they might be a bit pissed off about getting battered. It might just, be a kind of system thing. It's hard to see past Bournemouth at the moment. They're just so good in every department. Obviously, if I owned Cunha, I'd probably feel pretty good about it because they will give you the odd chance. I mean, Cunha scored at Anfield or whatever, so I'd feel okay about owning Cunha, but I wouldn't feel great about backing Wolves to win the game. I think that's too much. To say.
In the broader sense, though, you're quite interested in Cunha. Is that someone you'd consider in the weeks going forward?
Oh yeah, and it's really frustrating. It's like this it's weird, this assistant managership, isn't it? Because I keep forgetting that I need to release those funds. So in my head, I've got like, oh, it's okay. I can afford to do Njai to Cunha or even Pedro to Cunha because they're both 5.5. And then I keep going, oh no, I can't. I've got to wait till the assistant managership finishes so I get my money back. And I keep forgetting and I'm like, oh, for God. And I've got exact cash. It's so annoying. So for my personal team, basically, I need to have it to be able to get Cunha because I've got no strikers. To be able to get Cunha for Njai or Pedro, one of them has to not drop by Friday. But Pedro's predicted to drop tonight or tomorrow, and Njai's predicted to drop tomorrow. So can you imagine if they've both dropped by Friday and then that's it? I'm priced out of both of them.
Wow. That is, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't make me go on another price changes rant. People will probably already be aware that I hate the idea of midweek price changes, but maybe it's just me. You mentioned João Pedro as well. That is a pain in the arse, isn't it? That situation, because this was the week, right? This was the week. I mean, do you think he starts?
No. I don't. I mean, it's so frustrating, isn't it? I mean, and he's got Bournemouth at home, I think, or something next. He's got decent fixtures, or Fulham at home or something. He's got really good fixtures coming up. He had 2 good chances when he came on as well. I took the risk. I had him down as about 50% chance of starting. I thought it was pretty 50-50. And normally I wouldn't start a player, but it was him or Mikalenko for me. So it's a little bit more understandable. I had Mikalenko against Palace after, and Everton were tired. So I thought it was worth the gamble. And then he came on and he had like a virtually an open net from about 25 yards away. But it wasn't easy. And then he had a good header chance. But yeah, I can't see how Rutter's been so good, hasn't he? They're all kind of, Mitoma's playing really well. Minter's suddenly playing pretty, well. Welbeck's obviously playing well. So unfortunately, no, you can't see it. You sort of half hoping somebody gets an injury, or one that's not too bad. I don't like to wish injury on people, but Welbeck's very injury prone. Minter's had a lot of niggles. So there is still, there is a chance, especially with Welbeck. There's every chance that before we know it, he could be back. Because obviously, again, it's 29. He's got Man City in 29, which again, it's not terrible. It's not a terrible fixture.
So Matt Mugsby, that gets me every time. In the chat as well, Hertzler could start Pedro as part of rotation. 27 is midweek against Fulham. I hope so, because I've got him in draft and he's a pain in the ass. Okay,
that's interesting. I should say to Sir Matt Bugsby, I think he was one who questioned last time that given because we've got the Newcastle announcement as a double. We won't go into this too much now, but I am now at least considering a free hit 29 because I think things have changed a little bit. So I'll just put that out there instead. It's not a surprise.
Yeah, I think we'll spend a good amount of time on it on next week's pod. I think for those who are thinking about free hit 29 and thinking about their strategy, I think next week feels instinctively like the right week to go into that in a little bit more detail. So we will do that a little bit more. The bandwidth probably isn't quite there this week because of people still on the assistant manager chip, but I think that's a good one to look at. Of course, some people will be on the assistant manager chip next week as well, but perhaps not quite as many. They were looking at Chelsea, right, for next week. Well, we'll see. And I saw there are a few other fixtures there to just talk about a little bit. City Liverpool one is quite important. So what do we think? If we were predicting that one, what do you think, Stu?
On that fixture, I still think Liverpool will be too strong for City this week. despite the resurgence, I think Liverpool just win that 2-1, 2-0, something like that. So just a nice, comfortable result in the end. I can't see anything past that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, and I think you again the odds favour your prediction, but I think we do have to talk about captaincy because it is. In fact, I probably should have done a separate slide for that, Danny. But captaincy this week is a little bit of a humdinger for people because there is no absolute clear cut. I think the problem that people are facing is they'd be like, oh, this is quite a decent week to go against Salah, but the other options are not immediately forthcoming, are they? The obvious ones, perhaps. I mean, of course, you could risk Arsenal. Some people will look at Bournemouth, and then of course Brentford. What do you think, Danny, for captaincy? Is this entered your thinking yet, or are you quite happy to just leave it where it is and make peace with Salah?
Yeah, I've been on Salah. I think we've only had one game, haven't we? I guess we need to see a bit of City tonight as well. We've had one game of City just sort of playing well again. I think I agree with Pep. I just think Liverpool will be too strong. I've got it on Salah. I feel quite good about that because even if City, give them a game, you think there's going to be goals in it because I don't think City can stop Liverpool. But some people again think about someone like Late Riser who wants to catch up a bit. It's a reasonable week to have a bit of a bet. It's just as you say. It's just where do you go because Parma all of a sudden doesn't look as appealing because Chelsea all of a sudden look so bad. So that's what could have been an okay fixture on paper, a reasonable bet doesn't look appealing now. Brentford and Bumo, I don't know. He just seems to have let us down when we've actually wanted him to return this season in some of those bigger games. He's a brilliant player to go for, and he could easily be a great pick on paper. In terms of EV again, he's right up there. It just doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't excite me. They feel a little bit unpredictable. And then you do have some interesting ones at Arsenal. Again, it depends how you feel about that game and those players. You'd be picking players that are not reliable captaincy players. It would be a massive gamble to go for, Wanyeri or what's his name, Trossard or something like that. It wouldn't be for me, but it's definitely fun. And then there's Bournemouth. But again, the problem with Bournemouth and captaincy is the things that we've talked about. They're three brilliant picks, those midfielders, but they've all got quite a significant downside.
They all split the points, don't they? I mean, like last week they all scored points, but none of them got massive hauls.
Exactly. I mean, if which is pointless saying because he's not, but if Cliver was 90 minutes, then he'd be a real captaincy shout for me because Bournemouth are that good. But I wouldn't captain someone that I think could, has got a very good chance of only playing 70 minutes. Just wouldn't do it. So yeah, does anything jump out to you, Rich, or?
This won't shock anyone here. I'll be honest with you. I don't think it's given me any real cause for thought. I'm quite happy leaving it where it is. I honestly don't. I wish there was a saucy option to go for and we could be full of midweek bravery, as I like to call it. But I really don't think that there. I mean, that's the difficulty, right? You start looking at, say, a Semenyo, Cliver, Dango. Do we really believe that they're a better captaincy option? Do we really believe that this week? It's one of those things where you could feel like it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. But when you get round to Friday, do you really believe that they're a better captaincy option?
I like the Brentford, Brentford option. I think Bumo could have been a fantastic captaincy option this week. Did you say that game was the early fixture though?
Yeah,
Friday.
First game.
And I don't know about you, but psychologically, I don't like putting my captain in the early fixture because that then ruins your whole game week if that doesn't come off. But I would say that. I mean, I already own Wissa, but I'm not too confident about that. I'd rather put my money on Bumo, to be fair.
It is very difficult with Mbeumo at the moment because again watching the last game a bit more closely at West Ham, obviously. Again, I mean he looked good, of course, but if I was absolutely honest, Wissa was easily more dangerous and more likely to score. I don't especially like Sade. Is it? I never know whether I'm quite getting that right. But for Mbeumo, has an element of selfishness which just detracts a little bit from me. I do like when Wissa and Mbeumo play close together from a points perspective. So it is a tricky one, but I could easily see that being a 15-point-ish fixture for Mbeumo. But there is equally a chance that Leicester get a result there. I wouldn't be entirely surprised to see not much at all. So it is a very difficult one. But yeah, at the moment it's Salah for me. Boring, I'm afraid.
No, on one thing that sort of, I suppose, I don't know if anyone cares about this or thinks something similar. Just trying to think out loud. But if people are looking to make ground, and because it does get to that time of the season where you think, oh, not many weeks left, but there's still plenty right now. But I suppose what hopefully is quite nice on paper, despite having a player who's by far the best, by a mile the best in the league in terms of captaincy and the just general pick this season, we've got game week 29 where he blanks, where we get to have some fun. Yep. We've got 33 where he doesn't double, where we can definitely have some fun. You've got 32 if Isak isn't fit or if it's not obvious or Palace, whatever. So there's 3 weeks there where we're definitely not captaining Salah, or I'm not. I hate using we, sorry. And it may well be that Liverpool have already won the league by, I don't know, game week 35 or 36, and they might be trying to win the Champions League. And then all of a sudden, the last games of the season open up a bit as well. So
plus, it depends whether you want to climb the ranks, right? If our ranks are on the screen, we might be more. The one with the lowest rank might be more inclined to take a punt.
And it's always fun. I mean, even if I've got a really high rank, I'm always looking for an opportunity to captain someone that's got lower ownership, but when it's justified. And this is a week where there's definitely a more than reasonable justification for it. It's just that unfortunately the guys who are close, I just don't have a gut feeling. I'm not thinking, Mbeumo when you've got Salah. I'm not thinking, I'm not excited enough by it.
I think what's interesting about this is there is a little bit of a parallel to the assistant manager conversation, isn't there? In the sense that one wants to reach for something that might be considered not there, but the difference is that with the assistant managership, if you do get it right, it's 20 points or something like this. Whereas to get it right and to go against Salah doesn't have the same level of of potential outcome. So that's probably the way I would see it anyway. But yeah, you've heard it here first from Danny. There's a reason people like Missionary. It gets the job done. Anyway, let's talk through our teams, and then we'll do a few questions before we let people enjoy the Villa game, which I don't know what's happening, but if anyone in the chat wants to hear in...
It's 0-0, and I'll get the fastest updates, to be honest, because I'm on
the betting sites.
Yeah,
that we don't encourage.
Liverpool have 3 shots already. So,
Stu, we can see your team. You've got a Mad. I'm sure we can just have a minor diversion to that Manchester United performance on Sunday for Danny. How do they look, by the way, Danny? Just before we look at Stu's team, was it as bad a game as people tell me? Because I didn't actually watch it.
It was a reasonable game to watch as a neutral. I don't know, maybe. I mean, the way United set up was absurd. It just didn't make any sense. It was just such a weird formation. Just left the right-hand side completely open. Bruno was basically winging. Casemiro was basically on his own in midfield. So it was very strange. We looked so vulnerable.
The central midfield got overrun, didn't it, Danny? Completely overrun.
Yeah, it got overrun. But we obviously, with his system, whatever it was he was trying to do, we did create chances. Not enough. We weren't good, but we should have scored. And oh God, it's hard as a Bruno owner. It's hard to forgive Garnacho's finishing ability that he missed that chance, because that was just such an easy chance. It was such a terrible technique to sky it from where he was.
He's not a good finisher, Garnacho. He's not. He's proven that he's not a good finisher.
No, not for those sort of easier chances. But yeah, I mean, Bruno was, despite kind of being all over the place and being on the right wing and kind of deeper, he created loads of chances. He nearly scored directly from like 2 corners. He had some really good crosses. Garnacho should have scored. He finished on a baseline bonus of like 28. So if he'd have got an assist, he'd have got full bonus. So it was very frustrating as usual.
All I'm hearing is that it was right to take the risky, sexy move and hit out Bruno for a Bournemouth midfielder.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. Good. No, I did hear that Garnacho, I think it's something like he's got the lowest big chance conversion rate or something. As it was something along those lines. I heard that earlier.
No, do you want to know the stat I read? Because
Go on. Yeah.
I'm just as a general United one, this did shock me. I mean, I'm in this. Oh, sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong one. I'm in this kind of United chat with pretty reliable guys, and he said that Manchester United have created 49 big chances in the Premier League this season and missed 43.
It's not good. Anyway, sorry, Stu. We kept you waiting there while we were having a moan about Man United, which is an important part of our routine here. Evening to a few new people, by the way. I know it's getting on a bit, but it's nice to see a few new names there alongside our welcome regulars like Colm Bugula and so forth. But Block 5, you are very welcome here. Stu, tell us what you're going to... So your choice, really, as far as I can see it, for those who have got it on their screens, between switching Slot and switching Rodgers. Sorry, switching Ahmad and then not playing Rodgers. Is that the fair assumption here?
Or doing both.
Or hitting. Hit. Was that hit? Yeah.
Yeah. So I could go Ahmad to Semenyo, free transfer. That would give me the double Bournemouth midfield. I could go Ahmad to Bumo, but then I'd need to find some extra money. So that would involve downgrading Slot to Glasner or McKenna to get the extra money to go Ahmad to Bumo for -4.
Villa have scored.
Oh.
Oh.
Who knows if it'll count?
It's doing its thing again, is it? As long as it's not Rodgers.
But it's already going to VAR. So again, there'll be people watching the game going, "Yeah, shut up, Danny. It's not going to count." But all I can see is goal, and it's suddenly currently being reviewed by VAR.
If it could be,
it's already been disallowed. I think it's already been disallowed.
Cool. That's good news as a Trent Slot owner.
I was hoping for a McGinn goal myself, but that's a very draft specific requirement. To be fair, he might not even be playing. Yeah. Do you want any notes here, Stu? I suspect Danny has a view, but I mean, Ahmad. The thing is with Ahmad, right? It's not a temporary issue, right? He's out.
He's out. So he's got to go at some point.
Yeah.
So I could downgrade Slot to Glasner or McKenna, chase the table bonus, bring Bumo in for Ahmad, and then captain Bumo, and chase the extra captain points that we were speaking about in the captain conversation a minute ago, and therefore, in fact, do the two things that Danny said were the biggest rank highs by chasing the table bonus on the manager and doing the different captain.
I'm just going to do the boring iron UI fronts question here. How are you looking for 29, or are you not interested?
Yeah, I'm going to probably play through 29.
So you've got. I could
probably get on from free transfers, and still be able to keep Salah and Palmer.
So you've got goalkeeper covered. Yeah, you got the gaps there are obviously Ahmad because he's injured, Salah, Trent.
Yeah, Trent and
Paul. Robinson as well, yeah.
No, I think Robinson plays, doesn't he?
Yeah, he plays Spurs.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. Sorry, it's very
loud. I think because I haven't got a huge amount of, the full. Once Slot goes, I won't have the full complement of Liverpool, and I've only haven't got the full complement of Newcastle either. So, kind of able to get a team out. I think in 29, maybe with only one hit from now until then.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, if you hit, this is the only week it makes sense to hit, probably, right? I mean, in theory, you could do it in 29, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it this week. Okay. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. If it makes sense if you want to do the hit for a long... Again, I'd have to visualize your team in 29 and see how much it helps you to do the extra transfer. But hit averse me, just gut reaction looking at that just says just play Rodgers and then just do the manager transfer.
Okay.
But that's what comes to my mind when I first look. But then obviously I've not had your thought process of thinking ahead and thinking, because obviously I would like Brumo for the next few weeks. But I just think I do like Rodgers at the moment, and I like the look of that Chelsea game at home for him. One of the two seem fine. There's definitely opportunities to just not take a hit, but still have a pretty differential team. You could still captain, if you really wanted to go for it, you could still captain Wissa or Dango.
Yeah.
Just remind me, sorry, Stu, I'm a bit being slow on the uptake here. If you do a manager transfer, then you've got 3 transfers before 29, yeah? So you've got 27, 28, 29.
Yeah.
And does that mean you get 11?
Yeah.
With 3, you should, yeah?
I think so, yeah. If I take a hit this week. That's
what I mean. So so it sounds like you need a hit either way. If you are, so you either leave the manager or
I could leave the manager on slot and just do the AssMan to Semenyo or play Rodgers, and then I wouldn't need a hit.
Yeah. See that's where it's a bit closer to me, because you either leave the manager and no hits, or you take a hit. Yeah, so that's the problem.
Yeah,
it's not. You're going to get 11 out anyway. You've got 8 now. You'd get 11 out without a hit still, wouldn't you? 27, 28, 29. You've got Pickford, Gabriel, Robinson, Dango, Palmer, Wood, Wissa, Milenkovic. That's 8, right? And then you've got transfers in 27, 28, 29. So you could still get 11 out without a hit.
But, yeah.
Okay, well, if that is the case, then yeah, it's that you prioritize the manager, I would say, yeah.
Okay.
But I think it depends on how strongly you feel about Mbeumo as a captain, right?
Yeah.
Actually, there's been a few.
The one I'm most scared about this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a player.
Yeah, I can back that as well. I can definitely back that as well if you want to take a hit for Brumo and captain him. It's reasonable.
There's actually been a few questions about Rodgers and whether he needs to be moved on or started this game week. Do either of you have a big view on that one?
I think differing views, don't we, Danny? Because you quite fancy Rodgers in this game against Chelsea, and I'm sick of owning him and him getting his points in other games and getting yellow cards in the Premier League matches. So
well, this is it. It's all perspective, isn't it? Because I'm like, I've been quite low on Rodgers for a while in terms of someone I want to start, and so I've coming from down here, and then obviously I'm watching him as a non-owner, just scared, and all I'm feeling is fear and then relief, and then I'm watching him in like Champions League games scoring a hat-trick, and I'm watching him get what to me looks like he's growing in confidence. He's playing further up, more central. He's got players around him like Rashford and so on, and obviously Chelsea have deteriorated quite badly, and they're at home. So it might depend on how tired Villa get tonight playing Liverpool, but all those things together, I wouldn't feel comfortable myself benching Rodgers with that fixture.
What I will say. Sorry, Stu.
Go on. I said I'm sick of the sight of the guy. He hasn't got me any points for weeks. So different view. So.
He's definitely expendable now, I think, it's realistically. What I will say, I've seen plenty of teams on the various apps this week who are benching Wood for Rodgers again.
Stop it.
They'll no doubt find a way to get him, Danny. We don't need to reiterate.
This is really ruining my enjoyment of the season, Chris Wood, like suddenly not owning Chris Wood, this guy that I've had for so long. It's really messing my enjoyment of the season up. And then it's, I don't want to talk about Chris Wood anymore, basically.
But unequivocally, you play Wood over Rodgers. I regardless of, I know it looks like a difficult fixture and all the rest of it, but come on, I don't think that's particularly.
The thing with Wood, and also the reason why I want to get Cunha in, is that any return for Wood or Cunha automatically gets you 3 bonus points in any game they return. So if you have those two up front and they get any return at all, you're going to get 6 extra bonus points. And for me, that's going to happen. I've got to change to have a forward line with Wood and Cunha involved in there, definitely.
Good. Okay. So if deadline was in 5 minutes, Stu, you would go for you'd take the hit for Mbeumo from the sounds of it.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, cool. I will.
Although obviously we all know how much I love Semenyo, so that would be the other option for the not the hit. So
cool. Let's go on to a rather battered and beaten up Jason Bourne there, which is probably appropriate after that Wood conversation.
Yeah.
So 4-5-1, not often rolled out, Danny, but is that what you're likely to have this week?
Yeah, I forgot what my team looked like. It's not pretty. I've been screwed.
It's been unlucky.
I've been screwed. Nothing else to it. I'll be going with. I've not really got anything in the bank, so it's not really worth. I'm definitely doing the manager transfer, so nothing's worth a hit on paper for me. Obviously, I could do something like keep Emre and bring in Raya for Alisson. I could actually do something like that, which is probably pretty optimal. Probably it's probably pretty good on paper because obviously I get the West Ham game, looks like a pretty good fixture, and then I get a player in 29.
Do you know, I don't mind that. I really hadn't considered it, but that is quite an interesting idea.
I probably do need to think about it more. I probably do need to think about it more because it does look pretty clean. And Arsenal look pretty solid at the back, and look like they're going to have to prioritise defending. And I don't know. It's just that you've got a very reasonable chance, haven't you, with picking one of these managers of getting a 20-pointer or even a 10, 11, 12-pointer.
Just a quick question: if you did the goalkeeper move, does it affect anything in terms of your move next week? Because obviously you get the money back. Can you do one of the strikers?
This is it. This is it. Good question, because that's pretty much the reason why I won't do it. But then again, I might. So also, things could change on Friday. So I lose 0.1 if I did Alisson to Raya, which would mean I can definitely not afford Cunha next week. But obviously, if, as predicted, Njai and Pedro both drop on Thursday night, I can't afford it anyway.
I'm nervous for you.
It's not nice, is it?
No, it's not. No, I hate that. It's horrible. It just ruins your enjoyment, doesn't it? You won't be able to sleep properly and anything like that.
Do you not want to take the risk of playing Pedro against Southampton? I know I don't even like Pedro, but it's a fixture. You've got to put him in the team, haven't you?
Well, that's what I did last week. I thought Chelsea at home was a good fixture, which it was. They won 3-0, and he came on and got 1-pointer, and it's. I think.
So you feel about the same way as I do about Rodgers, right? That you've played him all those games, and you're just.
Wow,
Rodgers is going to play 90 minutes, whereas João Pedro's. Brighton have just won 2 games.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the actual difference between how much they play or whatever, but just the fact that you've been burned by him.
No, I'm not playing him because he's not going to start. It's just that simple. They've just won 2 games for the first time in ages when he hasn't played. So he had a 50% chance of starting last week, and now he's got about a 20% chance of starting. So
I just think the ceiling on some of those defenders is not particularly high.
No, it is a little bit worrying. I mean, especially Liverpool have scored. That's it. Dream's over. No, I know. Especially Hall, because now they don't have Joelinton. It doesn't look good at all, really, does it? So, and also, I think Mikalenko. And again, I hate this because when they play against United. I've done this a few times. Where as a United fan, even beware of fans, you think, surely we're going to score against Everton. But actually, Mikalenko, that's a pretty good fixture because United are terrible. And maybe I should be playing Mikalenko over Hall or Munoz. Maybe I should be playing Mikalenko over Hall.
Yeah, it's interesting you raised because I was about to ask that. Of course, you've got the clash with Bruno, of course, but I mean, yeah, if I had to put money on who was more likely to keep a clean sheet, it would be Mikalenko, I think.
Would you play him over Hall? Yeah. Or I mean, it's hard to bench when it's close. It's hard to bench the guy who's basically playing up front. I feel like.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Yeah, it would be Hall. Yeah. But again, logically, it doesn't make much sense, right? Because of course you got you have to hope Bruno does something and so on and so forth. It's difficult.
If you didn't own Bruno, then I would play Mikalenko. That's the trouble, right? Owning Bruno is changing your thought process.
Yeah, it doesn't really something I consider, but it is true. Limits the ceiling a little bit more. I mean, if Joe Linton was fit, I would just leave it like this. But I really do worry about Newcastle against anyone, never mind Forest, with the way they're playing at the moment without Joe Linton.
Yeah, Joe Linton's really crucial to the way they play and the way they set up.
Yeah, they were terrible without him last season. Remember when he got injured last season? Missed like 10 games and they were terrible then as well.
He's totally reinvented that player as a box-to-box midfielder.
It's one of my low-key favourite Premier League players, Stu. Yeah. I still can't explain why. But actually, we have a question which I might just chuck in now, which just feels like the right time to throw it in. So our good friend Mikey, who's been a little under the weather this week, so we hope you get better, Mikey, and hope you're listening to this in bed with a couple of Lemsip or whatever it is, and someone sort of tucking you in nicely. Best João Pedro replacement for the medium term. Any thoughts?
Cunha, definitely.
And if you would you wait until you got the funds for someone like that, or is there anyone around the same price you like?
Same price.
It's kind of delap or bust at this point.
Yeah, there's not much around that price range, is there? That's probably why people have Pedro in the first place.
You're eyeing up, obviously, a Pedro replacement, Danny, before we go on to my team. So it's who's it between at this point in time?
It's just Cunha, I think. Who am I forgetting? I mean, there are other picks. I mean, even better or someone like that. But it's in terms of using a transfer, Cunha just looks good for a while, doesn't he? Quite a few fixtures. So I've not entertained that thought yet. Because I might not be able to afford him next week. Who else is there? Is there anyone else around that price bracket that's cheaper than Cunha that we should be thinking about? I can't remember.
Wissa is probably the other. I mean, unfortunately, you'd have missed a few good fixtures there, but that's one that plays through 29. It goes a bit awry from 30. That's the only thing with him. But yeah, it's
could do a sideways move to Welbeck.
I know, yeah. I just don't trust Welbeck's fitness. It is a reasonable shout, though. It's definitely a reasonable shout.
That's interesting. I'm glad. Thanks for putting that out there, Stu. That causes some interesting thoughts. Combugula says would have been Wissa last week, but definitely Cunha this week. Okay, cool. There's me sneaking in a saucy Rick Mail picture, just for everyone to enjoy. Love that. Actually, I mean, this is ridiculous knowledge, but we mentioned Wolverhampton. That hotel scene, that the fictional hotel was set in Wolverhampton. The Hotel Splendido. If you're interested in that sort of thing, probably not. There's probably just me and Danny who watch Bottom and such. But anyway, team stuff you can see on there. It's obviously I did a big racy hit last week, so in a sense it's sorted. It didn't backfire or didn't make any points really either. But Enzo and Bruno are gone, so that's a headache of sorts gone. But it didn't really help things for Game Week 29 in a way, so it's a funny one. Just had to be done to relieve some funds. So fairly settled. Dango in last week. So really, I think I can afford to wait on the players. And Jai is still sitting there rotting away, but it's okay. Emery on the bench. I've got plenty of funds, so it can be anyone. So yeah, it's just a case of how much risk I want to have come Friday night. It basically depends on whether I'm drinking tea or beer when we have our team chat on Friday, Stu.
Yeah, you could actually roll that team. It still looks in pretty good shape now that you've done.
Good roll. I've got enough. I think this is good for our planning purposes. I think I've got enough moves to cover me off for 29. So obviously, what have I got? And Jai needs to go, and then I've got Becker, Trent, Salah, and Isak. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. So all the moves are required for those purposes. I'll need to just double check all of that. But yeah, it should be an Emery move.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Because if you changed anyone on the bench, who would you take out, and who would you take out the team in order to get them on the pitch? That would be the thing, right?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I've given it almost zero thought this week. I really don't need to do anything, I would say.
Yeah,
quite happy with that.
Which leaves you a free hit on the manager change, effectively, free punt.
So yeah, as you say, and in terms of who it is, I think it's squarely through the people that we've mentioned. But Danny already knows what I'm going to do. Realistically, I know what I'm like. So unless I go mental and have a little too much to drink at the end of work on a Friday, it's probably going to be Arteta. But I know it's not fun. I know it's not good for the pod. And thank you for Colm for giving me a bottom quote there. Indeed, caviar references all around. But yeah, I don't know. I think the only one that I think, as you say, I would a little less inclined with Glasner than is the hype this week. I'd probably rather roll on the more jazzy McKenna one myself if I was going down that direction. Any more questions that we can have? I'll just take that off the screen and then we'll see if there are any others. Heather in the chat, would you bench Cunha or Szoboszlai this week? Any takers?
Szoboszlai, definitely.
Away at City, Cunha, yeah, I think that's a fairly straightforward one. FPL Douglas, as in the Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which is well worth a view if anyone's interested in half an hour of sort of kitsch 80s horror comedy. If you still had the assistant manager chip on the assumption that both Newcastle and Crystal Palace have double game weeks in 32-33, which would you prefer to run through with the same manager 31-33? So this is quite an interesting question because initially you look at it and think, oh, for sure, it's got to be Howe. He's got some lovely fixtures through then, doubles, obviously. But Glasner's got the 5 fixtures, many of which, if not all of them, I can't remember, I need to look, have table bonus, which is a really interesting one. Yes, Newcastle away and City are away, I think, are in that mix. But I think that's one where I actually, the longer I've thought on that, I love the idea of backing Glasner for the 5 risky fixtures. Actually, that's one that even I, boring though I am, would be very interested in that. And the other reason is that actually Newcastle do have a nice triple up of players. You know, it's quite easy to find those options. So what do you think, Danny? Because obviously you've got a bit more of a malleable situation because you've got triple captain to use, bench boost and so on as well. So, but if you had it, where would you look for the assistant manager chip? Would you leave it until the end, or do you like one of those two?
Yeah, it's a good question because I haven't thought about it at all, but that's very appealing. If that's Palace, if Palace have got...
I really like that.
If Palace have basically got 5 table bonus fixtures, I'd find a way to do it. I mean, again, if I don't know when Joe Linton might not be back by then, you never know. He might have had a setback or something. That opens up Newcastle to being much more beatable. Palace can get a result against anyone really, so I'd be all over that. And you know, whenever I look ahead, try and sort of at least have a little quick go at looking ahead and thinking about what the likely doubles are in 33 and all that sort of stuff, and you bench boost. Honestly, I think it's very unlikely that we'll have kind of 4 doublers on my bench, for example, in a bench boost anyway. You know what I mean? So wouldn't be too worried about missing out on the best bench boost in 33 because if you actually look at it, you probably got one or two doublers, you know, and then maybe 1 or 2 good single game week players, whether it's Trent and Gabriel. It will be good. But if you're talking about if you're right with Glasner, if you have potential for 5 table bonus fixtures, I'd be very, very tempted with that, and maybe just find the bench boost another week.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. I know we said about playing it at the end of the season, but 5 fixtures, a lot of which are going to be table bonus, makes a lot of sense. But I suppose it depends on how Crystal Palace are playing at that point as well.
It's more about, as Danny says, how you want to deploy bench boost and triple captain, that sort of thing.
Villa have scored, boys.
Okay,
Sorry,
cool. We'll come back to that. No, just in a second. So if you wanted to deploy on Crystal Palace, you've got, I can't remember where this extra fixture, but it includes Brighton at home, Man City away, Newcastle away, Bournemouth home. You could potentially stretch it out in the other direction and use Arsenal away as well. So it's an interesting set of ones, but you can just see them picking up a couple, certainly one win and a couple of draws in those difficult fixtures, something like that. I could easily see that happening. So,
and also, there's no reason if you weren't confident that you couldn't switch the manager still, right? So if you to someone else, so you take the ones that you think are the most winnable on Glasner, and then you move it on to someone else and try and get more table bonus with someone who's a bit more reliable.
Yeah, it's possible. And another question that I haven't covered, but perhaps maybe the last one for us actually, and then we can draw to a close. I thought our good friend FPL Greyhood, who helped run the SKLW tournament, was joking, but he said is tripling up on Arsenal this weekend a good idea? So he was looking at whether you think West Ham are a team to be targeting. I think that's more his question there. I
think he's just having a pop at you, to be fair.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, to be honest with you, the question I would have is, like, where are you deploying that triple? And the three that immediately spring to my head, I don't know whether Danny agrees. I hate myself for saying this, but you could get Raya back in for sure. It makes some relative sense, right? We had bad luck with him.
You could have
Gabriel, you have
Ranieri and Gabriel, for example.
And then you have Ranieri, yeah. So it's whether you can find another spot for an attacker. I don't know, but I think you can in certain team arrangements, and of course they got nice fixtures after. Well, from Chelsea onwards, you could argue they're pretty decent. So even Man United away in 28, I don't hate that much anymore. So yeah, I think you could in certain setups. I think, but unfortunately, I'd probably be boring and say the goalkeeper's one of them, which seems a bit of a waste. But I don't know. That's probably my thought there. Good. Well, that's probably all I have, unless there are any kind of questions that anyone wants to kind of throw through. Thank you, by the way, to anyone who's kept faith with us in the chat this evening through nosebleeds, technical issues, goal alerts, and the rest of it. If you are able to share our good name out there and get us a little attention, it's not easy competing out there in the fierce shark-infested pools of FPL content. Are we that? I don't know whether we are that, but yes, you get my meaning as well. So please smash those buttons and do all that good stuff. Any last words, gents? Oh, what happened with the goal? Sorry, I completely forgot to come back to you.
Back to the goal alert.
Tielemans scored, and there was nothing to do with Rodgers or Watkins, apparently.
So it's 1-0.
It's 1-0. Alisson clean sheet wipeout as usual, but sorry, 1-1. It's 1-1 because Salah scored.
Oh God! Where was I? Okay, well, let's just end the game there. That'll do. That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's stop. Actually, a Watkins penalty miss saved by Alisson, and we can all be happy. Yeah.
Exactly.
We're agreed. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, I will let you both enjoy your evening. It was lovely to have you back on, Stu. So thank you for joining us. I know that you've spent the last few weeks in the Toby Carvery and the fish and chip restaurants.
Yeah, there was nothing better to do tonight, so I'm coming on the pod instead. So yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you've got your sort of £5 meal deal out of the way. And let us know the name of the address of the restaurant so that Danny and I can get down there at some point soon. Although let's pretend, I mean, my tastes are somewhat highfalutin for all that. I'm one of those people. But yeah, maybe one day. And thank you for joining me again, Danny, this evening. So good luck to everyone for the weekend, and I guess we'll fare thee well.
Cheers, boys.
Yeah, cheers, Danny. Cheers, Rich.